Hello everyone, welcome. My name is Jay Pestridge. Welcome to a continuation of the hardware series. Today we're going to be looking at storage space, the various different types, and how you can optimize your own and get the best out of your flight sim in terms of performance by how you set up your PC in terms of its storage space. So first off, what different types available are there? Well, there's three basic types. You have your HDD drives, which are clunky, mechanical, sort of from the old days of flight sim. They can range up to like 10 terabytes in size. They're very heavy, and basically inside it's all mechanical. It's like a platter that spins, just like a record, with a needle that then moves across, reading the data off. Typically, the data that is on the inside, it takes longer to read, and data that is on the outside is sort of quicker to come off. And in actual fact, there was a flight sim developer that created a program because the way the files are sort of spread onto the disk, they can get fragmented over time. The more files you put on, then the more fragmented your disk gets. And there is a program called DFrag6, which a flight sim developer created to help sort of speed up the performance of a mechanical hard disk drive. Basically, it takes all these chunks and puts them together, and it puts the files that are going to be read the most on the outside, and the files which are probably more for archival purposes that don't get read hardly at all on the inside. Basically optimizes your disk to make it faster for you, because the hard disk drives are the slowest drives available in a PC. I do not recommend using it for your C drive at all, and I don't recommend using it for your root simulator folder either. But they do have an advantage in that they are so cheap to buy in big bulky sizes, that if you do optimize your hard disk drive, you can use it to store sort of like photoreal satellite data or installer add-ons, things that you probably won't use on a regular basis, or sort of non-critical applications on your PC. And because they're so cheap, it's actually not to be overlooked, really. You keep the maintenance up on it, and you can actually have your add-ons run absolutely fine. Like, I have a D drive here, which is 4 terabytes. It's a HDD drive, and I have all my airports, some airplanes, all my scenery files on this drive, which, to be honest, when you boot your sim up and your sim starts to load, it caches files into the C drive anyway, and then that's where they're read off from the sim. So I would recommend on your C drive having at least 100 gig of free space for this very reason, but I'll get into that later. So the second type of storage space is called SSD. Now, SSDs are much quicker. They're called solid state drives. They are kind of like a halfway between a HDD drive and an M2 drive. They're very small, very compact. They're more like a memory card more than an actual disk drive, in the fact that it's all digitally placed. There's no mechanical things on it, and it's like a flash drive, if anything. But they're very fast, very quick. They're probably about 3 to 4 times faster than a HDD drive, and they're much more stable, because over time a HDD drive would get defragmented and start to corrupt and fail eventually, whereas an SSD, you don't need to defrag it at all. In fact, it's advised that you never defrag an SSD drive, and they last like 10 times longer than a HDD drive, not only because of their compact size, so they don't heat up as much, but just the very nature of what it is. I do recommend an SSD drive for your C drive, or for basically any flight sim drive at all. Like, if you've got to have any one type of drive, then SSD everything. It's very good. I find it even better than the next one up, which is the M.2 drive. Now, my C drive is an M.2 drive, and so is my F drive. I have, I think it is a G and an M and a D drive, or these two rather, are SSDs, and that's a HDD. Now, M.2s are very fast. They're the fastest type of drive you can buy, and they are literally, they look like a stick of memory, and that's kind of how they perform as well. It slots directly into your motherboard. A motherboard, you can usually have 1 or 2 spaces for it. But the only issue I have with M.2 drives is their reliability. They are more prone to failing, they are more prone to corruption, and because of how small they are, you can damage them so far easier, because literally they are, because they plug straight into your motherboard, they are literally exposed. You know, you can get covers on your motherboard to protect them, but at the end of the day, they are super fast, but they're just not as reliable as an SSD drive. So, like, yes, use an M.2 drive. I've never had an issue with my C drive version, but at the end of the day, I have a feeling that will fail first before my SSDs do. SSDs are more reliable, I feel, more safer, and just as fast. I mean, they're not faster or as fast as an M.2 drive. An M.2 drive is considerably faster, but there's not much difference between the speed of an SSD and an M.2. The problems you'll face if it fails are not worth the money you have to pay, because they're more expensive as well. They're really, I would say, an addition to a FlightSim setup in terms of store your add-ons on them, and then you can plug up a couple of extra drives, but having your Windows operating system on them and all your personal files, maybe just not the way to go, I would say, unless you really do take good care of it. So there are the 3 different types of storage space available, and with the HDD drive in particular, because it's the slowest, it does have an advantage of being very cheap to purchase large storage volumes of space. So like a 10 terabyte hard disk drive is probably only like 200, but you can't actually get a 10 terabyte SSD or M.2 drive. So there is value in having a HDD drive, but I would only recommend doing that for storage like archival things, because like I said before, over time they can corrupt, and there's kind of a maintenance that you have to keep on top of. If you're looking to get like a 10 terabyte HDD drive, which big and clunky, then I would heavily recommend investing in DFrag6. It was an add-on made back in the day of FSX by a FlightSim developer, actually, who was looking to get more performance out of a HDD drive by optimizing it. And what it does is it when you paste files into a drive that is a HDD drive, it kind of just puts them anywhere on the disk, and then, you know, they're not all together, these files. They can be fragmented across the disk. So this defrag program puts all the files together, so it makes it for easier recalling. But the nifty thing is, the files that get recalled the most will be placed around the outer edge of the platter, where it's the quickest to recall for the needle, and then the files that you probably won't use as much gets placed around the center edge of the platter, which it takes the needle the longest to get to. So you can actually increase performance times and loading times by defragging your drive with DFrag6, which I highly recommend. I use it. You don't really need to do it loads, probably maybe once a year, and it will be enough, but every time you do it, you kind of strip a little bit away of the life of that drive. So doing it all the time is not advisable, but once you do it, and again, if you don't actually move files around on that disk, you only need to do it the once, and then you're kind of set for a year. But and then over time it still will degrade, but not as much. If you're constantly putting files in and out, then I recommend doing it more regularly. But every time you do it, you damage your drive a little bit, so do it with caution. But I do highly recommend them. So how should the setup be basically for a FlightSim? I've seen a lot of people put their FlightSim on other drives. Now the trick is the bandwidth. Everything gets cached on the C drive. There's only so much bandwidth in any single cable going from any one of my drives into the C drive, and unfortunately, you know, Windows caches files and your FlightSim caches files. it is little point. There is no point in actually putting a flight sim on a separate drive and having your C drive only for Windows, because when you boot your sim up, files get cached on the C drive anyway, and so you're now passing files from your, let's say if I had the Microsoft Flight Sim on this drive, cached files now get transferred to the C drive anyway. So if your flight sim is on your root C drive, then they don't have to travel that far. They're literally just instant, you know, and they will get cached. You can't really get around that. This is how flight sims work. They cache files. Your Windows caches files. So if your simulator is sitting on another drive, you're still transferring files to your C drive. So I would say, instead of having a small Windows drive and then loads of larger, you know, disk drives, is to get a large C drive. I've got a 2 terabyte one. I'd probably recommend 2 to 4 in today's current world. Windows probably only takes like 25 to 50 gig of space, but then Windows updates comes along and it gets bigger and bigger over time. A lot of original files, like documents files here, will all go on your C drive as well, so they can build up as well. Even if you've put your games or the flight sim somewhere else, there are temp files, there are document files that will still get stored on your C drive. So get a big C drive. That's more recommended than getting a tiny one, and put your root simulator in the C drive as well. Not only does it avoid permissions problems, but it will actually be quicker than having it separate on another drive. The way I set my PC up for the flight sim is I have my flight sim running off the C drive with Windows, my airports, my scenery items on another drive, and then I have 1, 2, 3 other drives to import add-ons with, be it airports or scenery. So basically I have got 4 drives associated for add-ons that will all pool together to run the sim off the C drive. And like, I find that this is the best for performance way of doing it. If my simulator was on another drive, then that's cached data coming into the C drive along with all those add-ons as well. There's only so much bandwidth your C drive has. Like, it's connected directly up to the motherboard, so it's still got a finite amount of bandwidth available to it. But if you bottleneck your system through pushing too much data through, you're going to create lag and stutters and low performance in your sim. So the trick is, the more drives you have loading into the pool cache of your flight sim, the better performance. Like, it doubles with each drive, only up to a certain point, because there's only so much bandwidth on the cable to your C drive. So they all kind of share that same bandwidth, and they all kind of have to, you know, give so much. So like, if you look down here, let's look at, this is my C drive. Right now there's not much happening on my C drive, but the read and write speed is in kilobytes, but that could easily go up to megabytes depending on, you know, what kind of cable you've got plugged up. Obviously this is a M.2 drive, so it's plugged directly into my motherboard, so it's pretty quick and fast. Yeah, I would say stick your flight sim on your main C drive, and this will optimize your performance for the sim. Like, I see so many people who advise to put your sim on every single drive, and actually you're hampering your performance, because all those sims on all those drives, they all have to pool cached information in, and it goes to your C drive. So you're still pushing data back to your C drive. So what's the point in having your flight sim on a separate drive? It doesn't make it any difference in terms of like keeping the sim separate from your PC, like your Windows operating system. But one thing I do recommend is running a scan every now and again on your system. So if you go into the search here, type CMD and run as administrator, this will help to actually keep your operating system optimized. If you type in SFC space /scan now, this scan should only take 3 minutes. So right now it's 22 minutes past. So if we watch this. This should finish around 25 minutes past. And all it does is it checks your Windows operating system for errors, and if it finds them, it fixes them. Job done. Easy peasy. I recommend doing this before you install any add-on, or maybe like doing it once a week or every third day. It does nothing to do it, but the reason I say it takes 3 minutes is that if your CPU is perhaps a bit slow, you will notice this if it takes longer than 3 minutes. 3 minutes, your CPU is good enough for flight simulation, and your disk drive is actively working. You can see it go here. If it starts to lag and go down low, and this takes longer, then you know you've got a problem on your drive before it becomes a problem, and you know your CPU probably isn't up to the task of flight simulation. So this is a really good sort of safety check to see how other pieces of hardware are running and doing. Now, in terms of permissions for your C drive, I do recommend, if you're still got Windows Defender active, is to create an exclusion file folder for your flight sim within Windows Defender, because Windows Defender can be scanning stuff without you even knowing it, right? There are so many processes going on in the background here, like that this can all take performance away from your flight sim. So there's a couple of tricks what I'm going to show you that you can actually get some more performance out of your hard drives by preventing some things from happening by Windows behest. So right now we're coming up to that 25-bit, and this is almost done, so I know CPU is fine and my hard drive's fine as well. So there we go, it's just completed, and it completed it within 3 minutes exactly. So it probably could have done it quicker, only for the fact is I'm recording a video at the same time, but it didn't find any violations, so that's good. Right, here's a couple of tricks you can do to increase the performance on your drives. First off, you go into Control Panel and change the category to large icons, and scroll and find something called indexing options. Now, as you can see, I've disabled this feature on my PC, and basically what this does is it's a little dude with a clipboard who goes around and checks every single file move and makes a note of it. So when you want to search for something down in here, you know, or in here using search this PC, you know, let's see if we type the word darken, and it'll say like it's going to work on it, but it's going to be slow because I've stopped indexing from running, right? So cancel that off. Basically, the indexing increases searches to happen faster, but this comes at a cost because every time you use your PC, it indexes things. And if you're in the flight sim and it's caching files into that pool we talked about, that's moving files, and so it's indexing all that, and your indexing can take away CPU cycles from your sim. So if you want to disable it, it does absolutely nothing to disable it. Like, it's not dangerous to do, it has no bad things happen to your PC if you do this. But click advanced, and basically what you want to do is first off delete the process here. You'll scroll down, you'll find it. It's called Windows indexing something. Just disable that, stop it from running to begin with, right? And then go to your drives and go to properties and go to here and untick allow files on this drive to be indexed, right? Do that for every single drive. Make sure there's no tick boxes in any of these. Okay, so now you've stopped Windows basically from oh, hello to that one. Yes, and so it will now remove the indexing things from happening, and we'll do it for this one as well, because that seems to have happened. I don't know why that's happened, but anyway, now they're going to do that, and then basically go back to here once you've stopped the indexing feature, once you've unticked all those things, and basically make sure these are unticked here, and click rebuild. And when you click delete and rebuild index, it will delete whatever it has indexed so far, and it will rebuild another one. But because you haven't told it to rebuild anything, it basically won't run, and nothing will load up here. If you do see things here, make sure you untick them, because these are items or places that it will index. So make sure you remove these first before deleting it, because if you don't, it's going to check these locations, and eventually when you've done this a couple of times, you'll end up with it looking like this: nothing to index, and it's not even running. And this is a massive performance save for your hard drive, because if Windows ain't doing anything in the background, then there's nothing to do. So that's one thing. Another thing, to make it easier on yourself, if we bring up a folder here, is open up the permissions on your drives. So go to sharing and make sure you're sharing your drive, and go into advanced sharing permissions, make sure there are tick boxes and there is an everyone here. If it's not here, you have to set up the policy yourself. So go to security, click edit, type add, and then type the word everyone, click check names, and it will bring that up, and then you click OK, and everyone will appear there. Make sure there's a tick box in every one of these here. Click OK, and then everyone will show up under sharing when you go here and click permissions. And this basically allows anything I install to be allowed to be installed without having a sorry, you haven't got permission to do this. Windows updates will change this feature, and you will have to redo it with every Windows updates. They even change the way the permission system is done. Sometimes you have to go in the policy editor and set it up as well, but other times you don't. But I recommend turning the everyone feature for sharing to everything, because there's nothing worse than, you know, you're suddenly in your FLIGHTSIM and suddenly you get an error saying you haven't got permission to access this file, and or you go to install something and it says you don't have permission to install it here. I really recommend the permissions thing is basically to ignore Windows. You know, like Windows does try and run in the background and check everything you're doing. Like Windows security can be a right pain in the backside. I recommend as well going into the security options for Windows and disabling everything. Whenever I start before I start my sim up, I remove the real-time protection, so there's nothing checking anything. I also turn off everything here. I don't even have exclusions set up or the ability, because I've actually disabled Windows Defender. The only reason to disable Windows Defender is so it doesn't start preventing files from running. If you're and a lot of FLIGHTSIM files, especially for P3D, can be classed as legacy files, and these can have a major impact on Windows operating system, who thinks it may be a virus, but it isn't, and so it will put it in a quarantine area. Now if you're in your FLIGHTSIM and a file is trying to be recalled which is in a quarantined area for safety, your sim crashes because the file's not recalled. Either a texture will not load properly, or your sim could even crash because it hasn't been able, it'll have a dominoes effect. So I've removed Windows security completely, and my PC is a dedicated FLIGHTSIM PC. I don't install cracked software, or I don't download dodgy links, so there is no reason for this extra layer of protection for my PC, because I am that layer of protection. The Windows security is basically to protect the Windows operating system from the users themselves, who probably download all sorts of dodgy shit, and if you don't do that, you're wasting resources on your drives from Windows security running. So disable everything. If you want to be able to completely disable Windows Defender so it's not running at all, there is a way to do that. Basically, if we go into my control panel here and open it up and go to System and Security, go to Windows Defender, you'll see it's dead. And there are files in my Discord for turning off the real-time protection and turning it on. I've got two reg keys, one turns on, one turns off. Now if you update your PC, you have to have Windows Defender running. If you want to open your Windows Store, you have to have Windows Defender running. So I basically, whenever I do an update on my PC, which is probably like once every 4 months, rather than the every single day it wants to update, I run Windows Defender by reactivating the Windows Defender, and then I deactivate it once it's done, because I don't really go into the Microsoft Store that much, the Windows Store, and I don't want Windows Defender interfering with my flight sim. So turn off all that stuff and you will have less problems moving forward. There's also another trick you can do. By going into your settings in the gear icon and going into System, to the About page, and on the right hand side here, Advanced System Settings, there is a performance section here. Now if you basically just turn off pretty much all of these except for a couple, I just have Enable Peak, Show Thumbnails instead of icons, Show Window Contents while dragging, and Smooth Edges of Screen Fonts. That's it. You will save a whole heap of performance, because all of this stuff here takes CPU to do. It doesn't take that much, but it all adds up. Another thing I do as well is make sure that the processor scheduling is set for programs and not background services. Another thing I do as well is I turn off the ability to create system restore points. This is basically again to protect the user, but every time you turn on every time your PC, so every time you make a change on your PC, it records it in a file for your system protection, so you can recall if you do mess up your PC. But in all honesty, if you don't mess up your PC that often, then these restore points also again take away system resources to create these restore points. There's no real need to have a restore point if you're not ill-treating your PC. So turning it off again will save performance in your flight sim, and it could make the difference between coming in for a landing and suddenly your PC is whirring in the background for making a restore point, and your frame rate starts to jump a little bit, or even it could cause a crash if there's no system resources available. So turning that off, turning off the effects will save performance as well. Also, just make sure your hard drive is compatible with your motherboard. If you put a corrupted hard drive into your system, then you're going to have loads of problems. Now, combined with the turning off the resolution section in the Windows safety feature, you will be basically gaining so much performance out of your flight sim. So that's basically about it. So making sure if you turn off a few Windows features, having the right type of storage space and the sim installed on the right drive, turning off extra features of appearance from Windows, keeping the temperature down in your PC, and having a compatible hard drive that's not errored or corrupted, all of this goes towards the performance of your flight sim. If you do everything I've said in this series, you're going to increase performance on your drives, your GPU, your CPU, and your memory. That you will definitely notice a difference for stability and performance going into the future for your flight sim. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this one. And in the final video, we're going to be looking at the monitors and how you can set up your monitor for performance for your flight sim. Don't forget, I run a giveaway every month on my channel, €50 of flight sim vouchers. All you have to do to be in with a chance to win is be a subscriber to my channel and leave a comment down below in any one of my videos, and I will send those €50 of sim market vouchers off to the winner when I go live the vlog at the end of the month, and you can go spend it on flight sim add-ons. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Take care. Bye bye.